She had been running for 9 minutes. Imani Brooks was 29 years old, and she was barefoot on a stretch of highway in northern Seoul, in a thin white nightgown soaked translucent against her skin. There was a fresh handprint blooming purple across her throat. There was blood running down the side of her face from a cut above her left eyebrow, and the blood was getting into her mouth, and everything tasted like copper and rain. She had no phone, no shoes, no wallet. She had a direction. That direction was away. Behind her, somewhere behind her, she had stopped looking back, because looking back slowed her down. She could hear the engine of Daniel's car. He had not chased her down the stairs in a rage. That was the part that haunted her. He had taken his time. He had walked, calmly, the way he did everything, and he had gotten his keys, and now he was driving slowly down the highway behind her, because he knew, the way men like Daniel always knew, that she had nowhere to go. Her bare feet hit asphalt, then gravel, then asphalt again. She had stopped feeling them around minute 6. The cold had made the pain go quiet, which she understood from a first aid course her sister had made her take 3 years ago, was very, very bad. The body stopped feeling cold extremities when the body had decided to start prioritizing the organs. The body was making decisions about her now, decisions she had not consented to but could not override. She kept running. A pair of headlights cut through the rain ahead of her. Far ahead, maybe a quarter mile down the long curve of the highway, moving toward her. She did not know what kind of car. She did not know who was driving. She did not know what was going to happen if she flagged it down, but she knew exactly what was going to happen if Daniel caught her on this road, and that knowledge was the only thing left in her body that still worked properly. She stepped into the middle of the highway. She raised both her arms. She stood there in the rain in a translucent nightgown with blood running down her face, palms out in the universal language of please. Now, before I tell you what happened next, I need you to understand something. There is a documented phenomenon in trauma research called the bystander paradox. Studies show that when a person in distress flags down a stranger for help, the likelihood of receiving that help drops dramatically the more visible the distress becomes. People in expensive cars are statistically the least likely to stop. The wealthier the vehicle, the higher the assumption that whatever is happening is somebody else's problem. The car coming toward Imani Brooks was a black Mercedes, the kind with tinted windows and silent tires. Statistically, it was not going to stop, but statistics, as Imani was about to learn, do not account for the man who happened to be in the back seat of that particular black Mercedes, on that particular night, on that particular stretch of highway. The Mercedes did not slow gradually. It stopped, completely, in the middle of the road, the way a vehicle stops when the person controlling it has made an immediate, total decision and does not feel the need to make it gracefully. For 3 full seconds, nothing happened. Then the back passenger door opened. A man stepped out. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. His name was Park Joon-Ho. He was 36 years old. He was a tall man, lean rather than broad, wearing a black overcoat that was clearly tailored over a charcoal suit, over a shirt with no tie. His features were sharp, high cheekbones, a jaw that looked carved, dark eyes that held no expression Imani could read. There was a small, faded scar that ran from the corner of his left eyebrow down to his temple. The kind of scar that didn't come from an accident. He stood in the rain in his expensive coat, and he looked at her. He didn't speak immediately. He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't pull out a phone or call for an ambulance. He looked at her face. He looked at her throat, where the handprint was already darkening into something that would be black by morning. He looked at the cut above her eyebrow. He looked at her bare feet on the wet asphalt, and then, very calmly, he looked past her down the road in the direction she'd come from, where a second pair of headlights was now visible in the distance, moving slowly, deliberately, the way a predator moves when it knows it is time. His expression did not change, but something in his posture did. His weight redistributed. His left hand, which had been at his side, moved very slightly into a position that was not quite relaxed and not quite ready, but was something between the two. The position of a man who had just decided that the next several minutes were going to require him. He turned back to her. "Get in the car," he said. His English was clean. His voice was low and unhurried, and entirely without warmth. He did not say it like a rescue. He said it like an instruction. Imani did not move. Every instinct she had developed over 4 years with Daniel was screaming at her to run from this man. He was a stranger. His face had the particular stillness of men who had done things she did not want to imagine. The car he was offering was a closed metal box, and once she was inside it, she would have surrendered the only thing she had left, which was her ability to keep running. But the second pair of headlights was getting closer, and she could hear, now, faintly, beneath the sound of the rain, the specific low growl of Daniel's engine. The man tilted his head slightly. He had registered exactly the same sound. He looked at her face again, and this time, for the first time, there was something almost gentle in the assessment. "That car behind you," he said. "Is that the one you're running from?" Imani nodded. She couldn't speak. "Get in the car," he said again, "and I will deal with him." It was the deal with him that did it. Such a strange, specific phrase. Not "I'll get you to safety." Not "I'll call the police." Just "I will deal with him." Said the way someone might say, "I will respond to that email," with the particular flat efficiency of a man for whom the situation in front of him was a problem with a known solution. Imani took one step toward the car, then another. The driver, an older Korean man with gray at his temples, did not turn around. He did not look at her. He simply waited. Park Joon-Ho stepped aside to let her into the back seat. He did not touch her. She got in. The interior was warm. The seats were heated. There was a folded cashmere throw on the seat beside her. Park Joon-Ho got in beside her, on the opposite side of the back seat. He did not close the door immediately. He looked at the driver. "Sang-min," he said in Korean. The driver's eyes flicked to the rear-view mirror. Park Joon-Ho continued in Korean, very calmly, very briefly. The driver nodded once. Park Joon-Ho switched back to English. "He's going to drive forward about 50 meters, he said, "and then stop. The other car will pull up behind us. I'm going to get out and have a brief conversation with the driver. You will stay in this car. The doors will be locked. The windows are bulletproof. Whatever you see, whatever you hear, you do not get out. Do you understand?" "Bulletproof?" she whispered. "Yes." "Who are you?" He held her eyes for a long moment. "My name is Park Joon-Ho," he said. "And tonight, that is all you need to know." He closed the door. The locks engaged. If you have ever stood in the rain and prayed that someone would stop, hit that subscribe button right now. Hit it, because what's about to happen on that highway is not what you think. And if you've ever known a man like Daniel, if you have ever been the woman in the nightgown, drop one word in the comments. Just one. Survivor. I'm reading every single one. I see you. Daniel's car pulled up behind the Mercedes. Imani watched it through the rear windshield. Her ex-husband's vehicle was a black SUV. Expensive in a way that men like Daniel made sure their cars were expensive, loud, obvious, designed to communicate status. The driver's door opened. Daniel stepped out. He was a big man, 6'3", broad shoulders, the kind of body built in expensive gyms. He wore a dress shirt and dress pants even at 1 a.m, because Daniel did not own clothes that were not strategic. His blonde hair was disheveled now from the rain, but his face was completely composed. He was angry, but it was a controlled anger of a man who believed he was about to recover something that belonged to him. He started walking toward the Mercedes. Park Joon-Ho got out of the car. He closed the door behind him with a soft, final click. He did not move toward Daniel. He simply stood at the back of his own vehicle, hands loose at his sides, and waited. Daniel kept walking. Daniel was not the kind of man who slowed down for other men. Daniel had spent his entire life being the largest person in every room he entered. He had a particular gait, slow, swaggering, predatory, that he used when he was about to handle something. Imani knew that walk. She had seen it directed at her many times. She watched Daniel walk it now toward Park Joon-Ho, and she saw, for the first time in 4 years, what happened when that walk encountered something it had not encountered before. Park Joon-Ho did not move. Daniel slowed. It was barely perceptible. Daniel probably did not even register that he had done it. But Imani saw it, that small, automatic recalibration of a body encountering something its threat assessment system had flagged as not categorized. He stopped about 10 feet from Park Joon-Ho. "That's my wife in your car," Daniel said. His voice carried over the rain. He was using his negotiation voice. "There's been a misunderstanding. She's not well. She's been off her medication. I appreciate you stopping for her, but she needs to come home with me now." Park Joon-Ho looked at him. He looked at him for a long moment. He did not respond. Daniel, who had not been confronted with prolonged silence in approximately his entire adult life, attempted to fill it. "Look, man, I don't know what she told you, but my wife has a history of episodes. She gets confused. She runs off. It's a whole thing. She's not your wife." Park Joon-Ho's voice was quiet. "Excuse me? She's not your wife," Park Joon-Ho repeated. "I don't know what your relationship to her is, and I don't particularly need to, but I know she's not your wife, because married women do not run barefoot from their husbands at 1 in the morning, and they do not flag down strangers on highways with bruises on their throats." Daniel's face changed. The negotiation voice was gone. The composed anger was gone. What was left was a thing underneath, the thing Imani had spent 4 years learning to recognize and avoid, and Daniel took a step forward. "You don't know what you're talking about. Step aside." Park Joon-Ho did not step aside. "I'd like you to listen to me very carefully," he said. His voice had not changed, but something had happened to the air around him that Imani could feel even from inside the car. "You are going to get back into your vehicle. You are going to drive home. Tomorrow morning, you will discover that several things in your life have changed. You will not understand initially how. Over the following weeks, the changes will continue. By the end of the month, the life you have built will no longer exist in any form that is accessible to you. You will have nothing. You will be nothing. And you will spend the rest of your life understanding that this happened because tonight, on this road, you put your hands on a woman who will be under my protection from this moment forward." He paused. "That is what is going to happen if you turn around right now and get in your car. If you take one more step toward this vehicle, none of those things will happen because you will not survive the next 30 seconds. Do you understand me?" Daniel stared at him. Daniel did not move. The rain came down between them. "Who are you?" Daniel said. His voice had cracked. Park Joon-Ho looked at him. "I'm the wrong man to flag down," he said. Daniel stood there for another 4 seconds. Then he turned around. He walked back to his SUV. He got in. He sat for a moment, and Imani could see his face through his windshield, and she watched the things she had never expected to see in her lifetime. She watched Daniel Brooks, the man who had broken her ribs and her wrist and her capacity to trust her own perception of reality, sit in his car in the rain with his hands on the wheel and his face the specific gray color of a man who had just understood something he could not undo. He pulled away. He made a U-turn at the first opportunity, and he drove back the way he had come. He did not look at the Mercedes once. Park Joon-Ho got back into the car. He closed the door. The locks engaged again. He wiped a small amount of rain from his temple with the back of his hand, with the absent precision of a man who was used to making himself presentable after handling things. And then he turned his head and looked at her. "Are you injured anywhere I can't see?" Imani opened her mouth. She closed it. She had not cried the entire time she had been running. She had not cried standing in the road. She had not cried watching Daniel walk toward this man with intent in his body, because crying was a thing Daniel had trained her not to do where he could see it. She started crying now, not loudly, just quietly, a steady leak of tears from somewhere she had stopped accessing. Park Joon-Ho did not move toward her. He did not offer her tissues or platitudes. He simply sat across from her and let her cry for as long as she needed to, with the patience of a man who had nowhere else he needed to be. After about a minute, he leaned forward and quietly told the driver something in Korean, and the car began to move. "My ribs," she said eventually. Her voice was hoarse. "I think one of them is cracked. He kicked me when I was on the floor." Park Joon-Ho's jaw tightened. It was not visible to anyone who didn't know to look for it. "There's a private medical facility about 20 minutes from here," he said, "owned by people I work with. The doctors will not ask questions. They will document your injuries privately, and they will give you copies of all of it, in case at any point in the future you decide you want to use them legally." He paused. "You will not be charged for any of this, and you're not in debt for it. There will not be a transaction at the end of any of this. I imagine, given a man who just left, you are accustomed to assuming that anything done for you is going to be charged back to you eventually with interest." Imani stared at him. "How did you know to say that?" He looked away, out the window. "My mother," he said. He did not elaborate. He did not need to. The medical facility was not a hospital. It was a quiet building with no signage, set back from the road, accessed by a private gate that opened the moment the Mercedes pulled into the driveway. Two women in scrubs were waiting, professional, calm, entirely unsurprised by the woman in the white nightgown. They gave Imani a soft robe and slippers that fit. They gave her hot tea. They gave her time. A doctor, a woman, also Korean, also kind in a way that was efficient rather than performative, examined her in a private room. The doctor confirmed 2 cracked ribs, bruising consistent with manual strangulation, a cut above the eyebrow that would need 3 stitches. She photographed everything. She entered everything into a private medical record. She gave Imani a USB drive with the photographs, the medical findings, and a notarized statement. "You can keep it," the doctor said. "You can mail it to yourself. You can give it to a lawyer. You can throw it away. It is yours. We have no further record of this visit on any system that anyone can subpoena." "Why?" Imani asked. The doctor looked at her with a small, almost smile. "Because the man who brought you here built this facility for women like you," she said. "And he asked us not to ask questions, and we don't. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one." Park Joon-Ho was waiting in the sitting area when she came out. He had taken off his overcoat. He was reading something on his phone, looking entirely untroubled by the fact that it was now nearly 3 in the morning. He looked up. "You can stay here tonight. Private rooms upstairs. The door locks from the inside. Or, if you prefer, I can arrange you be taken to a hotel or to anywhere in the city you would feel safe." He paused. "The third option is that you come with me. I have a residence in the city. You would have your own wing, your own space, your own staff. You would not see me unless you chose to. There would be no obligation of any kind, and you could leave at any moment. I am offering it because I believe, given what I know about the man whose car you just escaped, that he is going to spend the next several days attempting to find you, and the safest place for you in the immediate future is somewhere he cannot reach. Those are your 3 options. There's not a wrong answer." Imani stood there in the soft robe and the slippers, with a USB drive in her pocket, and she looked at this man who had stopped his car for her on a highway and dismantled her ex-husband's threat with 5 sentences, and was now asking her, for what she suddenly realized was the first time in 4 years, what she wanted. She had forgotten the question. She had forgotten it was a question. She tried to remember what she wanted, and she discovered that her capacity to know what she wanted had been so systematically dismantled that she could not, in this moment, identify a preference between 3 reasonable options because she had spent 4 years being trained out of the muscle that produced preferences. She started crying again. Park Joon-Ho did not move. He waited. "I don't know," she said. "I don't know what I want. I don't know how to know." He nodded slowly. "Then come with me," he said, not as a decision, just as a delay. "You can decide tomorrow, or next week, or next month. The wing is yours for as long as you need it. And the moment you know what you want, you can leave." "Why?" she asked. "Why are you doing this?" He looked at her for a long time. "Because someone should have stopped for my mother," he said quietly, "and no one did. And I have spent 20 years building a life in which, if I am ever the one driving past, I do not have the option of not stopping." His residence was a compound, a low, modern building of glass and stone, surrounded by gardens, set into the side of a hill outside the city. The wing he gave her was a self-contained suite. Bedroom, bathroom, sitting room, small kitchen, private entrance. Everything she needed, arranged with the quiet attention of someone who had thought about what a woman in her situation would need. She slept for 16 hours. She had not slept 16 hours since she was in college. When she woke, there was tea outside her door on a small tray with a note. "Take whatever time you need. There is no schedule. Jage." She did not see him that day. She saw a kind older woman, Mrs. Han, the head of household, who gave Imani her cell number and explained, in careful English, that she was here whenever Imani needed anything and would not be offended if Imani never called. She saw him on the second day. She had wandered out of her wing mid-afternoon. She walked down a corridor, found a sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows looking out on a stone garden, and stopped. He was there, wearing dark jeans and a soft gray sweater. No shoes, just socks. He looked younger and less precise than he had on the highway. He looked like a man who lived here. He looked up. He did not stand. He simply marked his place in the book and set it down. There's coffee and tea. The kitchen is through there if you want to find something else. I didn't know if I was allowed to be in this part of the house. He looked at her for a moment. You are allowed everywhere in this house, he said. The only restrictions on your movement are the ones you place on yourself. She walked slowly into the sitting room. She poured herself a cup of tea. She sat down in the second chair, not because she wanted to be near him, but because the chair was facing the garden, and the garden was the most beautiful thing she had seen in 4 years. They sat in silence for a long time. He went back to his book. She drank her tea. After about 20 minutes, she spoke without looking at him. I'm scared of you, she said. I'm not scared the way I was scared of him, but I'm scared. I want you to know that. He did not look up immediately. When he did, his face was composed, but something behind his eyes had moved. That's reasonable. You should be. Why? Because you're a smart woman, and I am a man who had a conversation with your husband on a highway last night that ended with him driving away in fear. A man who can do that is, by definition, dangerous. The fact that you are afraid of me is not an indictment of me. It's a sign that your survival instincts, which were severely damaged by the last 4 years, are recovering. He paused. I would be more concerned if you were not afraid of me at all. Are you going to hurt me? No. Are you going to ask me for anything? No. Are you going to expect me to feel grateful? He looked at her for a long time. You can feel whatever you feel, he said. Gratitude is a feeling that often gets weaponized against women like you. Men do something for you that costs them nothing, and then they spend the rest of the relationship reminding you of the debt. I do not want your gratitude. I do not want anything from you that you do not freely choose to give, including your presence in this room. He looked back at his book. None of those things put you in debt to me. Imani did not go back to her wing. She sat in the chair and she watched the garden, and after a while, she got up and looked at the bookshelf, and she selected a novel she had been meaning to read for 3 years but had never had the time or the permission, and she sat back down and she read. He did not speak again, but he did not leave the room either. For hours later, when Mrs. Han came in to ask if they wanted dinner, Imani realized 2 things. First, that she had read for 4 hours without checking the door for an angry man who might come through it. And second, that Park Joon-Ho had not once, in those 4 hours, looked up from his book to check on her. He had simply let her exist in the same room as him, without performance, without expectation, without surveillance. It was the kindest thing anyone had done for her in 4 years. If you have ever been in a room with a man who let you simply exist, without watching you, without measuring you, hit that like button right now. Because what's coming next is a part where Imani starts asking who Park Joon-Ho actually is. And what he tells her is going to change everything. It took 3 weeks before she asked. By then, a rhythm had developed. She read in the sitting room in the afternoons. He was there sometimes and not there other times, and she had stopped tracking which. Mrs. Han had begun to teach her small Korean phrases. The doctor came once to remove her stitches. Imani had begun to walk in the gardens. She had begun to laugh, small, surprised laugh at things Mrs. Han said, which Imani did not realize she had stopped doing for 4 years until she heard the sound of her own laugh and did not recognize it. On the 22nd day, she walked into the sitting room and found him there. He had a glass of wine. He was looking at the garden rather than reading. She sat down across from him. What do you do? He set down his wine. That's a complicated question. I know. That's why I'm asking it. I have been here 3 weeks. I know that the conversation you had with my ex-husband on the highway involved a threat that he believed instantly and completely, which means you had the standing to make that threat, which means you are not a businessman in any conventional sense. She paused. I want to know what I'm staying in the house of. He looked at her for a long time. My family, he said, has been part of an organization in Seoul for 3 generations. My grandfather built it. My father expanded it. I inherited it 12 years ago when my father died. The organization is involved in shipping, real estate, private security, and a number of other businesses, some of which are entirely legitimate, and some of which exist in spaces that legitimate businesses do not enter. In the language your country uses, I am the head of what would be classified as a criminal enterprise. We do not deal in narcotics. We do not deal in human beings. We do not, as a matter of policy, harm people who are not actively engaged in the kinds of conflicts our work generates. He paused. My mother was a maid in the house of a powerful Korean businessman when she was 19. He was 41. He raped her. She had me. He paid her family to be quiet. She left him when I was 3. He found us when I was 7. He beat her to death in front of me in our apartment. And then he went home, and the police, who were paid by his family, said it was a robbery, and he was never charged. He paused. I have spent the last 12 years building something that I believe my mother would be horrified by, in some ways, and proud of in others. She would be horrified that her son's hands have done what they have done. She would be proud that her son's hands have, in 20 years, never been raised against a woman in anger, and never will be. He looked at her. That is the part of who I am that you needed to know. Imani sat across from him. Joon-Ho, she said. It was the first time she had used his given name. Yes. I'm not afraid of you anymore. He held her eyes for a moment. I know. When did you know? The day you walked into this room and told me that you were. She thought about that for a long time. Then she said, I think I'd like to stay a little longer. He nodded once. Stay as long as you'd like. Daniel found her on the 41st day. Or, to be more accurate, Daniel attempted to find her on the 41st day. By that point, Imani had begun to do things. She had begun to draw, which was something she had loved before she met Daniel, and had stopped doing somewhere in the 2nd year of their marriage because Daniel had said her drawings were childish. She had begun very tentatively to think about what she might want her life to look like in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years, and the simple act of allowing herself to imagine the future was itself a kind of return. She had begun to have meals with Park Joon-Ho, not every meal, but several times a week in the evenings. On the 41st day, Park Joon-Ho came into the sitting room in the late morning. He was in a black suit. He sat down in the chair across from her. Daniel hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago, he said, to find you. The investigator he hired is, by coincidence, a man who has done work for my organization in the past. The man took Daniel's money. He has spent 3 weeks producing reports for Daniel that contain entirely fabricated information about your whereabouts. According to the most recent report, you are in a women's shelter in Busan. Daniel is currently driving to Busan. Imani stared at him. You set him up. I redirected him. For 3 weeks. For as long as it took for me to finish what I was doing. She looked at him. What were you doing? He looked at her. Removing him, he said quietly, from your life, permanently, in a way that does not require violence, that does not put you in any legal exposure, and that he will be unable to recover from. Daniel's company has been undergoing what his board believes is an unrelated series of compliance investigations for the past 5 weeks. 3 of his largest clients have, independently, transferred their accounts to competitors. His personal assets are currently under review by the Korean Tax Authority, who received an anonymous tip about offshore accounts. 2 women, who he has previously assaulted, were contacted 3 weeks ago by a victims' advocacy organization. Their accounts will be made public in approximately 4 days. He looked at her. By the time Daniel Brooks returned from Busan, having found nothing, his career will have ended, his finances will have collapsed, his reputation will be in ruins, and 2 criminal complaints with credible witnesses will have been filed against him. He will be radioactive in this city. Your name appears nowhere in any of it. From the outside, it will appear that he simply, catastrophically, brought all of this on himself, which, in a sense, he did. Imani sat very still. Why are you doing this for me? He looked at her for a long time. Because the night I picked you up on the highway, he said, I had been thinking about my mother. I had spent the evening dealing with a complicated situation that reminded me of her, and I was driving home, and I was thinking about how much of my life I have organized around the fact that no one stopped for her. And then a woman in a white nightgown stepped into the road in front of my car, and she put up her hands, and I understood in the moment that I told my driver to stop that I had been preparing for that moment, in some sense, for 30 years. He paused. You did not save me. You do not need to. But you gave me, on a highway in the rain, the opportunity to become, in one specific moment, the person I have spent 30 years trying to become. He stood. I have to go to a meeting, he said. I will be back this evening. We can have dinner if you'd like. He started toward the door. Joon-Ho. He stopped. I'd like that, she said. He almost smiled. It was not quite a smile. It was a precursor one, the architecture of a smile, the possibility of one, but it was the most expression she had seen on his face in 41 days. Good, he said, 6 months later. Imani Brooks was standing on the terrace of a small house she had bought herself, with money she had earned herself, in a neighborhood in Seoul that she had chosen herself, and she was watching the sun set over a city that had become, against every expectation, a home. She had filed for divorce on the 45th day. It had been finalized 6 weeks later. Daniel had not contested anything. Daniel had had a great deal of other matters to attend to. She had reconnected with her sister. She had flown to Atlanta for 2 weeks. She had told her sister almost everything, and her sister had cried for an entire afternoon and then said, with the absolute fierceness of older sisters everywhere, I'm so glad someone stopped for you. Imani had not been able to say anything to that for a while. She had returned to Seoul. She had decided, with some help from Mrs. Han, that she wanted to start a small studio where she could teach drawing to women in transition, women leaving things, women starting over, women like she had been. The studio had opened 3 weeks ago. Park Joon-Ho had funded it. He had also, over Imani's quiet insistence, structured the funding as a loan rather than a gift, with terms generous enough that it would not damage her, but real enough that it preserved the thing that had become important to both of them, that she did this herself. He came over on Friday nights. That was the rhythm they had developed. He had not pursued her. He had given her, with deliberate care, the kind of distance that had allowed her to figure out, slowly on her own, what she actually wanted. They had become friends first. Then, 6 weeks ago, in the garden of his house at the end of a long evening, she had reached up and kissed him, and he had let her, and afterward he had told her, very quietly, that he had been waiting for her to know what she wanted, and now that she did, he was hers. In every way she would let him be. He arrived at 7, as he always did. He came up onto the terrace. He stood beside her, looking at the sunset. I was thinking about that highway today, she said. Were you? I think about it less than I used to. But sometimes, there's a thing I never asked you. That night, why did you stop? You said it was because of your mother. But there are women on the road every night. He was quiet for a moment. The closest I have come to an answer is that you were standing in the middle of the road. You were not running off the side. You were not waving from the shoulder. You were standing in the middle of the road with both hands up in the rain. And I looked at you, and I understood that you had decided that whatever happened next, you were not going to be invisible. And something in me responded to that before my mind had a chance to. He paused. The thing that saved your life that night was not me. It was your decision to take up the entirety of the space in front of my car. You did that. I was simply the man who happened to be driving. She looked at him. Joon-Ho, I love you. He turned his head and looked at her. For a moment he did not respond. Then his face did the thing it had begun doing very rarely. It produced a real smile, contained but complete. The smile of a man who had spent his entire life learning not to express joy because joy had been weaponized against him too many times, and who was very slowly in this small house with this woman, learning that some joys were safe. I love you too, he said. Imani turned back to the sunset. Below them, the city of Seoul was lit up against the dark. 6 months ago, she had been a statistic, a woman in a white nightgown in the rain. She had not been, by the math of the night, supposed to survive. She had survived because she had stood in the middle of the road. She had survived because a man with a complicated history had been driving by. She reached over and took Park Joon-Ho's hand. He squeezed hers gently. The sun went down behind the city. The lights came on, and Imani Brooks, who had been a woman in a nightgown on a highway 6 months ago, stood on the terrace of her own house in the city she had chosen, beside a man she had chosen, and watched the world get dark around her and was not afraid. If this story moved you, if you saw yourself in Imani, if you have ever stood in the middle of a road with your hands up, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment below. What was the moment Imani became unbreakable? Was it the highway? Was it the chair in the sitting room? Was it the decision to stay? I'm reading every single one. Subscribe if you haven't. The next story is already waiting. Until next time, beautiful souls, take care of your hearts. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.